At the top of the program, we laid out the administration's rewriting what the president said last night about taking over Gaza and releasing it as a Riviera of the Middle East, his words. Regardless of what the people around him say he said it all on camera, and millions of people saw it, including Arab Americans, many of whom voted for him. More from CNN's Jason Carroll now in Dearborn, Michigan.
Days before the last presidential election, Donald Trump was the invited guest at the Great Commodore restaurant in Dearborn, Michigan. Albert Abbas says he extended that invitation, a decision he is now reflecting on, given all that has happened in the last 24 hours.
Many in the community are at a loss for words. Last night was a very rough night for most of us.
Abbas is Arab American and one of a number of Democrats who voted for Trump. Abbas says he hoped Trump would do more than President Joe Biden did to help Palestinians suffering in Gaza.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip.
But after Trump said Palestinians should leave Gaza so it can be redeveloped, Abbas says not only does he feel betrayed, he's hearing from a number of people angered over his past support of Trump.
People were really frustrated, and I don't think there's anyone to blame. At the end of the day, as Arab Americans or Muslims, we really didn't have much of a choice.
Dearborn, a Detroit suburb, is home to the largest Arab American population in the United States, a community which helped Trump carry the critical swing state. He won 22% of the vote in Dearborn, Harris 36%, and Joe Stein 58%. In 2020, Biden handily carried the city with 69%. Faye Nimmer voted for Trump in 2020.
We need to get this situation under control ASAP. Be ready for anything.
Now, she is troubled by the president's proposal to move Palestinians out of Gaza. Infuriating.
I let some into your skull.
Some sort of negotiating tactic. That's the same sentiment shared by Abbas. Of course, this is clearly not going right. And real estate broker Ali
Ledger down. 3 Janus-signed staffers are missing somewhere in your AO. Locate and extract. Counting on their expertise
vote
to
for
end
so-called protest vote. Either supported Trump or Harris. Were there any sort of second thought? I didn't. So,
This box can't screw worse than breaking
say that the Trump
About fucking time someone dealt me a winning hand.
and the pass going forward is uniting opposition to Trump's proposal to move Palestinians out of Gaza.
The community will be unified. They will tell you this. The Palestinian people would rather die than live in a demolition site than to be ethnically cleansed and being sent out of Gaza to Egypt or Jordan.
So again, Anderson, after spending some time here in the Arab community, you really get a sense that they feel like they've been let down by both Republicans and Democrats. Certainly there's a great deal of frustration after hearing what Trump is proposing, but there's also a feeling that had Harris been elected, had it been a Harris administration, the feeling here is that Palestinians would still be suffering. Anderson?
Carol, thanks very much. And Dearborn with the numbers.
Oh, all right. We have to do polling. That's last night, right? Polling works. That doesn't work out yet. On the polling that we had prior, that was taken towards the end of last year, what we saw was the overwhelming majority of Americans opposed the idea that the United States should take a lead role in
less than yesterday.
It's here right there, 57%.
Never been so glad to see back at work.
I should notice the support was lower among Trump's own base of Republicans for the idea that
for
this
survivors, subduing threats. Help me save this town.
Yeah, so, like, we're talking about America, right? At the end of the day, it's still I mean, you rarely see numbers like this. Look at this. 78% during his first year disapproval. 10% approve it. And I even drilled down a little more. And what I found was, or at least disapproval among Gazans was even higher. The disapproval among Gazans was even higher.
Who wants an omelet? I'm talking lots of eggs.
This would not be about these things. That's what
Trusted Fox. I haven't trusted anything since Reagan. Wow. I felt like this when I heard my jumblings.
For a team we didn't expect to take on the apocalypse today, you're handling this well.
A disaster.
Why are we nation building over there?
What are you doing?
Nation building over here.
When President Donald Trump first entered politics nearly a decade ago, he did so with promises of putting an end to nation building and removing the U.S. from foreign entanglements in the Middle East. But now he's, of course, said that he has a new plan to redevelop the Gaza Strip, or as his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, put it, quote, make Gaza beautiful again. Rubio clarifying some of the details of the president's proposal yesterday.
The only thing President Trump has done very generously, in my view, is offer the United States willingness to step in, clear the debris, clean the place up.
As Israel's defense minister readies its military for the, quote, voluntary departure, end quote, of Palestinians from Gaza, one thing that's clear, President Trump and his plan have the full support of his Israeli counterpart, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This is the first good idea that I've heard. It's a remarkable idea. And I think it should be really pursued, examined, pursued, and done, because I think it will create a different future for everyone. He's the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House.
All right, joining us now, former Chief of Staff to Benjamin Netanyahu, George Birnbaum. Sir, good morning. Thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Good morning, Keith.
I'd like to start with the meeting itself, and especially the look on the Prime Minister's face there, as well as some reporting that he was as surprised by this as almost anyone. The New York Times wrote this, quote, it wasn't only the Americans who were scrambling after the press conference. The announcement came just as much of a surprise to Mr. Trump's Israeli visitors. Soon before they walked out for their joint news conference on Tuesday, Mr. Trump surprised Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel by telling him that he announced the Gaza ownership idea. People brief in their interactions. You obviously worked closely with Netanyahu. What did you read into his reaction, and how surprised was he?
Well, I was
Hi everyone, JJ here, welcome back. Well, who would have thought that Elon's bizarre behavior could be killing Tesla's sales? I made one video about this yesterday and we've got more figures coming in. We had figures from Europe and it does seem to be the case that Tesla sales are going down significantly in Europe with Elon's behavior. Who would have thought that a fascist salute, for instance, could plunge sales in Europe?
Lucky I'm still in one piece.
And look, Tesla sales plunged 59% in Germany to lowest level in years. That has come out now. Registrations of 1,277 cars is the worst showing since July 2021. That's quite a few years ago now. Carmaker lost ground in EV market that was up 54% last month. Now, is this the reason for it? Is this Elon's behavior the main reason for that? We're going to get into that. There are other reasons too, but it's got to be a factor, don't you think? Especially in somewhere like Germany. Now, Tesla sales in Germany declined further in weakness in the EU, and we'll see the numbers for the whole of the EU and now in Germany as well to compare it, and it is across the board here. Now, Tesla's turned toxic as sales crash in Europe and the UK, this headline says. So this is headlines all over the place about this, and this Tesla stock has gone down. This to the news, and now the markets look at the news. Tesla's Australian sales slump continues into 2025 as well. I haven't talked about Australia. It's my part of the world, Australia and New Zealand, and sales are dropping too. Here we can see BYD cars on the road, Tesla's biggest competitor worldwide, matching Tesla car for car, in fact beating it now by some reports that are coming out. And Tesla's 2025 isn't off to a tremendous start with a significant slump in Model 3 deliveries dragging down its overall tally, this headline says. In this headline about California, so it's not just in Europe and in Australia, it seems to be kind of worldwide as figures keep coming in. Tesla sales declined in California with Model 3 plunging 36%. That's the level of poor base that Elon really started with, really strong there, down over a third in California. That was in the video that I made yesterday. I said that, and so we're adding all these up now. Model 3 registrations fell by more than a third last year. EV maker likely lost sales due to Musk backing Trump and GOP. It seems likely that that's the case in California and maybe other blue states as well. We'll have to see as the figures come in. The first quarter earnings for Tesla is going to be super interesting because of this, to really see what's going on. And Elon Musk on the latest earnings call did not mention the Cybertruck. That's another factor. We'll talk about that a bit later on. They're pretty big got inventory they're trying to move there. This is Fred Lambert from Electric tweeting this out, or is it Xing it out? Ouch, now Germany numbers are in and Tesla is officially down more than 50% in Europe so far this year. So he's talking about the average of Europe. 50%. Some of that is due to the Model Y changeover. Okay, so that's the other reason they're updating the Model Y, and some Tesla investors are putting it down to that. But is it more than that? But some of it is due to the negative perception of Tesla. Fred says it's hard to gauge the impact, but I'd wager it is significant. Me too. I think that is starting to be significant. That seems to be clear. Imagine Germany, from what they've been through in the 20th century, don't like fascist salutes, for instance, and Elon Musk is supporting the far-right party in Germany. Q1 is going to be horrible, Fred says. Yes, it is going to be interesting to see what happens there. And this too I saw today on X from James. So it begins. I've got a whole lot of this. I hate to own a Tesla right now. You can see some vandalism going on the Tesla HQ, wherever that is, the dealership. I don't know where that is. I don't know if it's in Europe or the US, but I have been seeing pictures of more of this kind of thing. And also, we're starting to see crowds come out against Elon Musk in particular. Now, this is in the US. I have made a video about this. It didn't get a lot of views, really. It was about what Musk is doing with Doge and the way he's carrying it out. It's annoyed a lot of people, and people are mobilizing. You can see nobody elected Elon Musk. Arrest Musk and Fallon. I've seen that in my comments. Spelling Elon with an F at the beginning, saying Fallon. And so people really getting annoyed and questioning what Elon Musk is doing in politics and with Doge and everything. So many things in business as well. Now, if you're getting value out of this video so far, I really appreciate it. If you remember to hit that like button to help.
Alpha Team, this is Chief of Security Blanchard. Are you a sight for sore eyes? I've been holed up in the mansion since
I
yesterday.
never thought of going to say this, but there's similarities between
Now
the
that
tech
you're
companies
here,
in the Bay
stop
Area
that AO.
and the federal government.
Track body cams
What
are
are those? They're
coordinated.
both trying to do mass layoffs. So we're looking at this company right here in the Bay Area doing mass layoffs. 18% of their companies are being cut. And we're not looking at federal layoffs. There's been a bunch of people that actually taken, at least 20,000 federal workers have taken jumps buyout, because you better get some sort of thing, be like, you know what, I'm going to take this one rather than being cut, right? And so, so what is easy is that nearly 30,000 federal workers in Kansas City brace for layoffs. So when I'm looking at all these things, and I'm looking at all these people that have been let go from these agencies, I wonder what were they doing? Because people ask me comments like this that are saying, you might think that it's a good idea to trim some fat off the federal government. And the question is yes or no. It's never that clear to me who you're laying off and what people are doing. So if you show up to work and actually positively, no, I do not think that you should let go. But now I do know if what you're doing is actually contributing to the great society. Because I remember, I know Bob, and Bob is obviously a made-up name, but let's call this person Bob. And this person works for a government agency. And this just never shows up to work. People can't find him. He's out doing who knows what. And he's like, my job is really, really easy. I just kind of, sometimes I show up, sometimes I don't, and I just do what I want. Because they can't actually not hire me. And I've never seen that person actually do more than just show up. And I don't even know what he actually does for work. He's an auditor or something. And he says, yeah, I'll just show up when they want me to, and then I kind of leave. And I can do pretty much what I want. And so I show up to the office to badge in, then I just leave. So coffee badging, right? And so I think it's fair that the taxpayer pays for that? Probably not, right? But when you're a career in government, you gotta think about it like that. If you're a career in government, you take less money, but you get the stuff, the government check. You're like, I'm not going to retire very good these fast-paced environments, but I want stability. Because a lot of people in the government that do good work that are going to be let go. Because there's capitalism, right? There's people that are going to be cut, wrongfully cut, and that should not be cut. Trying to do mass layoffs, and like, well, cut all the people, then there's going to be damage. There's going to be like big casualties that shouldn't have happened, where it's like, oh shit, we actually needed this person, but now they're gone. And so, yeah. And now I'm asking you, do you think that is likely? Do you think that has any merit? Let me know in the comments below, or let me just hear your opinion. And if you haven't, please like and subscribe. And I do videos like this all the time.
Hey guys, my name's Chris, I live in Australia, and today we're just going to have a walk around through, weather's not so great, I'm going to squeeze in a walk while I can. Up north, Queensland right now is pretty bad weather, there's severe flooding and stuff, but a bit further down south, I've just got the overcast, so can't complain about that. But today, I want to have a walk and talk with you guys. I like to treat these as kind of, we're just mates, having a walk, raising some topics. And I want to have a talk about what's happening in Australia right now. And more specifically, we're going to start to breach into the topics of wealth inequality. And wealth inequality doesn't come just by itself. There's also, I'm going to call it the trifecta of incompetence that's occurring in Australia right now, which is causing a cost of living crisis, which is causing poverty, which is causing the working class Australia to put in 110% and not get any further ahead. So it is a systemic issue occurring right now. A trifecta of things, which is wealth inequality is occurring at a faster and faster rate. It's almost exponential at this point. Secondly, is government completely mismanaging how they spend money. They have no management at all. They're just blowing money out the wazoo right now, which is causing strain on the Australian account. And instead of us building wealth, we are now not absorbing it, just paying taxes and not getting further ahead. And the third part of that trifecta, of that little triangle of issues we're having right now,
is government efficiency, or lack thereof of government efficiency. The government is not executing anything for the people right now. So we have wealth inequality increasing exponentially. We have government not able to manage funds whatsoever, and we have governments completely ineffective and inefficient at what they're trying to achieve. So let's start with wealth inequality. So when you turn on the mainstream news, Channel 9, Channel 7, whatever it might be, your 6 PM news, see what's happening in the country, you're not going to see the reporters talking about wealth inequality. You're not going to see them up there saying, well, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. So as an idea of where we're at right now, you talk 10% of households in Australia. So the wealthiest 10%. They own 15 times as much wealth as the lowest 60% of Australians. So I'll say that again. The top 10% of households in Australia, 10% wealthiest, own 15 times the wealth of the lowest 60%. That's nuts. That is a wealth divide. That's a huge wealth divide. And it's progressively getting more and more. So it's exponential. I'd say it's exponential almost. So the line's going up. So the rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer in this country. And the systems that we have in Australia is allowing that to occur. I guess maybe, who knows, maybe the rich make the rules over here. Is that the same in your country if you're tuning in from overseas? Do the rich make the rules? But it's not sustainable, and that's the thing. So maybe the wealthy say, well, it works for us, and you start hearing, like, work harder, stop having avocados on toast, smashed avocados, or, as an idea, if I ate smashed avocados 5 days a week,
President.
Senator from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield 30 minutes of my post-closure debate time on the vote nomination to Senator Merkley and 30 minutes of my post-closure debate time on the vote nomination to Senator Schumer.
The senator has that right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President.
The senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I have 8 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Mr. President. With me today is one of my colleagues from my Senate office, Mr. James Shea. He is one of my right-hand people and does great work, and I'm honored that he could join me today. Gosh, I don't know where to begin. I've been in the Senate for 8 years. In dog years, that's 56 years. And it feels like 56 years. I've learned a lot, met a lot of interesting people. Before I got here, everybody told me about the Washington bubble. And I said, how serious could they be? Well, it's true. There is a Washington bubble. This place is different. It's in its own way, sometimes disappointing, sometimes refreshing. It is deeply weird. For one thing, common sense is illegal in Washington. It's illegal. For another thing, I've discovered that this is a town of very frustrated ex-class presidents. And there's a Washington way of doing things. And when things aren't done that way, when somebody challenges the status quo, many, not all, but many of these frustrated ex-class presidents in Washington, on the Hill, and otherwise, they get excited, not in a good way. They can't get their mind around doing anything other than the Washington way. They, some of them, particularly in the media, they go almost catatonic, or the exact opposite. They foam at the mouth, and they really get upset. They can make a Valium nervous. It's like the world, we're not doing things the way we've always done them, and the world's going to spin off its axis. I want to try to put in perspective,
I think at least,
what many of my Democratic friends have been talking about today. They're very, very, very upset at President Trump. And they're very, very, very upset at Elon Musk. President Trump ran for president on a number of issues. One of the issues
Senator Sanders joins. Now, you talk about an oligarchy running the White House. You have billionaires now turning in favor with the new administration, donating to the presidential library, the inauguration, making deals with family members of the Trump family. How far are we from the kleptocracy?
Well, let's start with oligarchy, and I think we are there. When you see three of the richest people in this country, the three richest, standing behind the president when he gets inaugurated, when you see Elon Musk, who contributed over $200 million to get Trump elected, and then becomes, in many ways, the most important appointee of the Trump administration. And when you see, since Trump's inauguration, Elon Musk becoming $150 billion richer, in 2.5 weeks, $150 billion richer. Tell me whether or not we are living in an oligarchy. The function of government under Trump, under Elon Musk, will not be to serve ordinary people, but to make the very richest people in this country even richer.
There are probably some people watching and think, oh, Elon Musk, smart guy, he's got 19, 20-something-year-old tech wizards going into government and looking for waste and abuse, and what's wrong with that? What is wrong with what is going on?
Nothing wrong with looking for waste and the kinds of bureaucracy that exist. I think we can do a whole lot to get rid of the waste and fraud, the excessive bureaucracy that exists in government, especially, by the way, in the defense department. What is wrong right now is not a simple reality, but what he's doing is illegal and unconstitutional. You cannot go into an agency like USAID and essentially fire everybody members of that agency. You cannot do that. That's an agency that was created by Congress. They want to get rid of USAID, fine. Come to the Congress, make your case. You can't do it unilaterally. You cannot withhold U.S. funds that were appropriated for Medicaid, for community health centers, for Head Start. You cannot put a freeze on that. That money was appropriated by the Congress. And as I hope every fourth grader in America knows, Congress holds the purse strings. And what I also worry about is not just the movement toward oligarchy, but this growing authoritarianism. I hope the American people are seeing clearly that we had the January 6th rioters, the people who were trying to overthrow an election, undermine democracy, contributed to the injuring of 170 Capitol Hill police officers. They are part of it. And then the FBI agents who worked hard to make the case, doing what they are told, they are now being investigated. What is the future of the FBI? Is the criteria to be an FBI agent in the future one who swears allegiance to Donald Trump, or one who upholds the Constitution? And I'll tell you something else in terms of authoritarianism. And this is something that you and other people in the media should pay attention to. ABC made a fine to Donald Trump, presumably for saying something that he didn't like. Meta, my Zuckerberg, paid a $25 million fine to the president. Right now, Paramount and CBS is contemplating reaching a settlement with Trump. He has sued the Des Moines Register. The FCC is now investigating PBS and NPR. That is a movement toward authoritarianism when you go after and intimidate an independent media. So you add it all together, we're moving from oligarchy, we're moving toward authoritarianism, and in terms of what topics, what can I say, before he got inaugurated, Trump and his wife issued points $100 billion. Anybody can give to the president defense by buying those points. So the American people are going to stand up and fight back with
we had a historian, George Goodwin, on last week. He talked about Andrew Jackson corrupting essentially government employees, giving out favors to people who were very favored with him. He gave them civil service jobs, and it took generations in America to correct that. And it took Teddy Roosevelt being the civil service commissioner for 6 years to really root that out and get a civil service that served the American people and not whoever was in power. The damage being done, essentially, people think, oh, well, maybe it's going to be 4 years. The damage can be done for generations.
I mean, it goes without saying. The overwhelming majority of March before civil justice. We can make it permanent. I am not here to tell you that we don't have it. You don't have what you don't work on it. But you don't get rid of thousands and thousands of dedicated public servants and replace them with people who are simply loyal to Donald Trump. That's not the way our democracy is.
Let me just quickly ask you, on Gaza, when you heard the President of the United States talking about putting the Gaza Strip and getting 2 million Palestinians out, I mean, has anybody who's read history or been watching for the last year, do you think this was a joke at first? I mean, can you believe this?
One could say that. On the other hand, given the suffering that the Palestinian people have gone through under Netanyahu, just killed them, at least 45,000 injured, over 100,000 mostly women and children. The idea that the President of the United States is going to say to these people, oh, by the way, you're going to have to leave the place where you live, because we are going to kill something equivalent to the French Riviera.
Well, the thugs of Hamas are still there. I mean, it's not as if they have gone.
What do you mean that's right? So, yeah, you just discussed a moment ago. How do you do this? All of that about how much money is being spent. But the idea of money, 2.2 billion people live in an area. You're gone. We're going to go to the French Riviera so my billionaire friends enjoy beautiful view. It is, to say the least, preposterous. It ain't going to happen.
I think one of the big questions from all of this is how Americans will absorb this tariff, all the tariffs and price hikes. So how are Americans feeling now?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see
me shaking my head here. Politically, I don't get it. I simply put, I don't get it. Because if we take a look here, Trump tariffs on Canada, China, and Mexico, the support is 38%. Now, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to figure out that the 51% opposed is higher than the 38% support. Americans are saying, no, when it comes to Trump tariffs. You know, there have been some things that Trump has done in his early days that are popular. I pointed those out. But this, my dear friend, is not popular at all. I've looked at a bunch of polling data. Some with vague polling language, some with more specifics like this one. And in every single one, the plurality from majority opposed to Trump tariffs, and just this tiny bit right here, 38% south of 40% support.
And so why do people appear to be against tariffs? I think I know the answer, but why?
But why? You know, sometimes I like the little layups, and then I like to jump through them, right?
Right,
All right.
yeah, we all like to look smart like that.
This might be the biggest burger we've ever seen. This thing is over 6 pounds, and it is thick. They start off with a layer of their house sauce before adding some crispy, perfectly cut iceberg lettuce, and probably the best looking tomatoes I've ever seen in my life. They got 5 slices on top, and then they got their monster beef patty. They have let it rest to let the inside cook, and then more pickles than you could ever want. Next up is an entire pig's worth of bacon, chicken tenders covered in their house sauce as well, and then finally you got some onion rings and more of that house sauce, and finally the top bun as well as some pickles. Would you try this thing? This might be the biggest burger we've ever seen. This thing is over 6 pounds, and it is thick. They start off with a layer of their house sauce before adding some crispy, perfectly cut.
There is new information that has just been released from the Federal Reserve that could spell disaster for gold and silver. I'll explain why in this video as we explore. First, let me just say that I am overall bullish on gold and silver for 2025, as evidenced in my prediction videos that I did at the end of last year. I still feel strongly that gold and silver are going to do quite well. But the data that has just been released from the Federal Reserve is a little concerning, although there are different interpretations of how that data can be perceived. And we've been here before, and it didn't lead to gold and silver prices crashing. But this time it's different because we have inflation. That is the big difference here, as we are dealing with a crisis with our money supply. And it's reflected in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's information. They are the container, they are the holder of the reverse repo facility. They are the reverse repo facility. That's repurchase agreement. That's a container of money essentially that can be lent out. So what it is, it's a transaction where the Federal Reserve sells securities to a counterparty with an agreement to buy them back at a later date. It's used by the Federal Reserve to manage the money supply by absorbing excess liquidity from the financial system, thereby influencing short-term interest rates. So in some ways, it's probably good because less money coming in means that there's money supply tightening, but in reality, it's not. And before we get too much further into this, when we think about a lower gold and silver prices, we have to think about that's an opportunity to buy. That's where my friends at Summit Metals comes into play, and they have really competitive prices on gold and silver, so you can check them out. SummitMetals.com. In this case, we are looking at a pool of money that is shrinking dramatically, the most ever, the lowest inventory in 1,385 days, according to Alone Wealth, found this information. The fact that the reverse repo facility has hit its lowest inventory in that amount of time means there's less excess liquidity being parked with the Federal Reserve. It applies several different things. One is that the banks might be holding on cash for operational needs or for lending purposes, suggesting they are not flush with excess reserves. It could also mean that a lower use of the reverse repo facility might indicate that the Fed's policy stance might be shifting or that market conditions are changing, possibly towards a scenario where liquidity is tighter. And one thing we know is that it could be a signal that the Federal Reserve, dealing with inflation, might need to essentially raise interest rates because inflation is still sticky and this money is not there, and it has been shrinking because of it's coming back into the supply. And if a bank fails, where is this money going to come from? Remember in 2000.
Founding member of Doge and former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. All right, Vivek, how have the Democrats handled these first 3 weeks? Is treating Trump like a virus with daily press conferences the answer?
I think it's been disastrous for them. But the reality is, Jesse, I think every American should be proud and energized by the fact that we have a president who has the energy to actually lead our country instead of turning the White House into a nursing home, which is what we had under Joe Biden. If you think about President Trump moving at a crazy pace, that's what they'll say. Think about the craziness of the last 4 years. Unprecedented open borders with an illegal influx of migrants like we haven't seen in American history. Foreign wars popping up at a scale we haven't seen in a half century. Think about inflation we haven't seen in a half century. Combine that with backdoor government censorship using tech companies to do their dirty work through the back door that would make our founding fathers roll over in their graves. Starting with that, yes, President Trump does have to move at a fast and furious pace. I'm grateful that he is. And you know what? I think most Americans are too. What do Democrats at home care about? Not the elites, but the actual Democrat voters at home. They care about their lives actually being more secure, more prosperous, and better. That's what President Trump's delivering, and it's why I think he's going to unite the country in the process.
So Democrats are going to the mattresses over $4.08. A lot of that $4.08 probably winds up in their pockets. We'll find out more later. When you hear about Politico getting paid by the Biden people $26 million, does that make sense?
Of course it doesn't make sense, and that's part of the point of why it's been so non-transparent. The idea of $4.08, in some sense, I don't think we should be using our taxpayer dollars even to help people in foreign countries, and we should be helping our own citizens here at home first. But the irony is it's not even going to help starving children in Africa or poor people in other countries. That's just the smokescreen and the excuse to actually carry out a political agenda through the back door. I think it was shameful that we're finding about state-funded huge media here in the United States. But I think equally bad is the fact that we're using that USAID, that foreign aid industrial complex, to push progressive ideas, LGBTQIA+ agendas, woke and DEI agendas, onto foreign countries that cause people in those other countries to actually hate the United States for values that most Americans don't even share. In some ways, the financial cost, that's bad, but that's the least of it. It's actually the other effects of that illicit foreign aid that's hurting the United States even geopolitically in other ways. I'm glad it's coming to an end. We've had 4 years to complain about this. Now we've had 2 weeks, soon 3 and 4 weeks to actually fix the problem. That's why the people sent Donald Trump in, not for incremental change, Jesse, but for sweeping change. And that's what he's delivering.
All right, he's sweeping out the front, too. Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Jackpot. Who fucking are?
Now, listen to Massachusetts headline. Call for protests in the streets over Elon Musk and Doge. Your horses.
This is a historic moment. This is the time when we have to stand up and to fight. To not stand on the sidelines. There should be hundreds of thousands and millions of people descending on Washington, D.C. We are march for freedom. We are march for democracy. We are the martyrs of the world. We are a democracy that people look up to.
Charlie Hurd with us this morning. You know, Senator Markey wants millions to protest on the streets. You know, you could say that that kind of rhetoric is dangerous. You could say that, couldn't you?
Yeah, you might want to think about that if you were Ed Markey. And it's remarkable. Whenever we see one of these protests, we've seen a couple this week with Ed Markey. We've done with Chuck Schumer, a couple of others. They are trying to get millions or at least thousands of people to march in the streets in Washington, D.C. The problem is they just come like 3 blocks from somewhere else in Washington, D.C. Those are the only people who care about these cuts to that DOJ is trying to make to these government programs. The only people who are up in arms about it are government bureaucrats, often unionized government bureaucrats. There's no movement in the rest of the country among taxpayers because taxpayers understand what is obvious. It becomes more obvious the more it's going to come out. And then the government spends wildly on things that have nothing to do in terms of improving their lives.
I think Senator Markey is particularly upset because he's one of the authors of the original Green New Deal along with AOC. And the Green New Deal is being taken to pieces by Musk and Senator Markey's not happy about that. Let me move on. Listen to what White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt had to say about Lib Democrats' rhetoric.
Russian with a ray gun.
President Holland says we have to fight this in the Congress, we have to fight this in the streets. So, what now?
And may I just point out, if you heard that type of violent, enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable. And for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable for that rhetoric.
You could make the case that Trump hatred was a factor in the last election. It didn't work. And I think you could make the case that Musk hatred, which seems to be predominant now, won't work either for the Democrats. What do you say?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right about that. And I think Caroline Levitt is exactly right about it. You know, that kind of rhetoric, there is no place for it. It is, but you know, on a political field, it's even more, I think it's even more damaging to them because it sounds so discordant with what most people see with their own eyes, which is Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing a lot of really good common sense things, doing things trying to cut spending, trying to make government more efficient and more answerable to the innocent taxpayer. And then you have these screeching lawmakers who are coming out trying to get people to fill the streets and protest, and it just doesn't make sense. And it's a reminder that, you know, President Trump is always playing multiple sort of board games at once. Obviously, he cares about the policies, and there's a lot to fix in terms of the policies. But he's also playing that PR game, and he's winning it. And if you saw that event yesterday at the White House where he signed the bill banning men from participating in women's sports, and you look at the prayer breakfast this morning at the Capitol, Donald Trump is talking to giving big speeches to a big audience of America. And people like Ed Markey and these other Democrats, Chris Van Hollen, they're just screeching to a smaller and smaller crowd. Yep. And they look, quite frankly, Stuart, kind of unhinged.
They do not occasion, that's true. Charlie, thanks for calling us. See you very soon.
And this just in, Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan just slamming Democrats on X, saying this: Democrats had no problem with the 80,000 IRS agents targeting Americans, but they're terrified DOJ wants to look into government corruption. This is a massive problem. You've got sort of a retaliation situation happening here with the confirmations. David, they're mad about one thing that's happening with DOJ or policies they don't like with Marco Rubio and U.S. aid, and so they're trying to take it out on the confirmations and the hearings, but that really hurts the American people. That doesn't allow the president and his team to get to work. It's the third time I'm bringing it up on the show, but I think it's important. You saw when we had that tragedy in the air, you needed your Secretary of Transportation in place. You needed Secretary of Defense in place so that they could get on these issues right away. The longer this takes, the more it hurts America.
Well, and that's a bipartisan comment that, generally speaking, blocking nominations as a way of trying to score political points just hurts the country. I totally agree with you. But I would argue, even if they want to win an argument, even if they want to persuade people, the screaming,
they're calling Elon Musk a Nazi, extremist stuff. I personally have had significant problems with certain things that, let's say, former President Obama, former President Biden wanted to do. But the idea of going straight to this code red, everyone's whatever, it doesn't work. And so they lose credibility. If there's a credible reason to be concerned about what they're doing with USAID or with Doge, they lose credibility with this kind of hysteria.
And it's amazing to me, Brian, because just to think about what Jim Jordan posted on X moments ago, this notion that the Democrats were trying to add IRS agents to shake down really middle-class Americans to try to raise revenue for spending that many people in the country didn't support. Yet, for some reason, when we're looking at the government, we're trying to trim fat and cut waste. That's a big problem.
It's such a good point, because what they're saying, in essence, is Americans are corrupt, so we need more people to go after them, but the government's not corrupt, so we shouldn't ask any questions of the government. I think, though, what's happening here is, what's being revealed is the left doesn't have any ideas to go after what's happening with Doge and Musk and Trump. That's why they're calling names. You call names if you don't have an idea. And I know name calling happens all over the spectrum, on the right, on the left, whatever. But at this point, if 2.5 weeks into Trump, you're going Nazi card, you have lost. It's part of why you lost the election, and you're now already losing 2 weeks into the term. So again, choose your indicators. There are some indicators where when you see anger, you actually know good things happening. And I think that's exactly what's happening.
And their agenda isn't even really working. I mean, they're making the point that we have to support some of this stuff.
Bill, the Stop Musk Act to protect federal workers who are at the forefront of Elon Musk's power grab. This bill is in direct response to what I'm hearing from my constituents, the demands for action. My bill prohibits retaliation of any kind against any federal employee who resists, prevents, or circumvents illegal or unconstitutional efforts led by Elon Musk or those he oversees. This is one of many tactics we are deploying. This multi-front battle will be fought in the courts, the halls of Congress, and the public sphere. In addition to our legislative and judicial practice, our most powerful tool is public pressure. We are witnessing an assault on our democracy, make no mistake. And the Congressional Progressive Caucus will fight at every opportunity. We must stay loud, we must stay tight, we must press on. And with that, I will pass it to Congressman Velasquez.
Good morning. Thank you, Qatar, for bringing all of us together. The press might say, here they come again, blah, 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 blah. But let me tell you, let me remind you, those dark days when we were fighting to preserve ACA, or even pass the legislation, and we kept organizing, mobilizing, until the public rise up. Today, millions of Americans have access to different healthcare because of the action that we take. And we are here back again, and we will be active every single day. Press conferences, protests, until the American people rise up and push back. This is a power grab by Donald Trump and every American should be concerned about it. See, what really frustrates me, that the Speaker of the House doesn't have the courage to stand up and defend the integrity of the legislative branch. Well, I am not going to go silently without fighting and to say and to remind that this is not only unethical, it's illegal, and it is unconstitutional. And we will fight back every single day. But I also want to talk to the American people. Do you trust Elon Musk with your most personal financial information, tax records, your social security numbers, your financial security? I don't trust Elon Musk with this information, and I know the American people want to. I also don't trust Elon Musk with access of the payment system that controls upwards of $5 trillion in transactions every day. Yesterday, we held a hearing in the Small Business Committee, and when I questioned Elon Musk trying to get into the system, they claimed that he needed to do this. First, that he was appointed by the president as a senior advisor, that he would go in to assess and analyze waste, drug, and abuse. But today, the New York Times has an article in which they discussed emails from the chief of staff that clearly stated the intent of just using this to stop aid to USAID funding. So this is the system that sent out Social Security checks, Medicare reimbursement, and tax reform, the foundation of financial security for millions of Americans. This is a hostile takeover of our federal system. We cannot allow the richest man in the world to have the power to veto funding approved by Congress so he can line up his pocket with more tax cuts for billionaires. This government does not belong to billionaires. It belongs to the people. What Trump and Musk are doing is unconstitutional. We demand Elon Musk to be removed from any role at the Treasury Department and from the federal government entirely. We are committed to using every tool at our disposal to stop this power grab. And with that, I will recognize now the chairman, the ranking member, soon to be chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, Representative Hoffman.
Well, thank you, folks, and good morning. Happy to join my colleagues here in pushing back against Elon Musk and his fake officials, his tech pros that are rummaging through sensitive data without authority in violation of the law. And I'm so pleased that we're beginning to litigate and confront this in the courts, that there's this great public awakening that's happening and the outrage that's been here in Congress. Colleagues and I stand ready to do our part to say no to this outrageous attack on our democracy and our personal rights. So we learned this week that Elon and his tech bros, these young people in hoodies who don't have security clearance, they're fake officials, that they crashed through the doors of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. No. These are folks whose mantra in the private sector is go fast and break things. And they decided to go fast and break things this week at NOAA. And so, people need to understand that this is an agency that does really important work that Americans depend on every day, although they don't always realize how much they depend on it. It is the home of critical scientific and regulatory systems that protect our safety in important ways. And this starts to make good on yet another aspect of Project 2025, something that I spent much of last year warning about. Trump has promised the Project 2025 agenda was very explicit about this, to dismantle and privatize. No. It's forcing Americans to pay for things like weather data, and also some of the maritime safety data that NOAA maintains. This could have real consequences for the day-to-day lives of every American. National Weather Service warns communities of incoming severe weather like hurricanes, and wildfires, and tornadoes. It provides information to emergency managers, decision makers to support our nation's commerce. NOAA's weather forecasts are used by aviation experts to prevent airline disasters, to keep our skies safe for millions of travelers that crisscross the country every day. Cuts to these programs and agencies, make no mistake, will put people in danger. Privatizations for this agency will put people in danger. This is not some kind of game. It isn't a stunt to drain the swamp. purging the government of scientists, experts, and career civil service, career civil servants, slashing fundamental programs, and things will cause lives. So I also want to make something else clear. Democrats are not going to stand for this. Right now, we are working on every front that we can. I was just at a briefing with Democracy Forum talking about the different ways they're doing stuff in it. It's a little bit wacko. Because every day, Elon and his tech bros ride their skateboards over to a new agency and start crashing into their databases. And sometimes we know about it in time for Democracy Forward or attorney generals or others to go to court and to enjoy it. But other times, compliant officials at these agencies just hand them the keys, and they gain access in really disturbing ways. So we're not going to stand for it. We're going to work with the outside folks who are litigating. We're going to work with federal whistleblowers. And we got a briefing this morning about how each of our offices can receive information from whistleblowers, protect their confidentiality, and help use those important voices to shine a light on these violations of the law and these outrages. But standing together with my colleagues here in Congress to use the leverage that we do have in this closely divided House of Representatives, to work closely with our allies in outside groups that are litigating, with states that are drawing the line against all of this in court and otherwise, and of course, with all Americans to mobilize public opinion. With all of this, I'm here to say to Elon Musk and his tech pros, enough is enough. Get out of our government. So with that, I believe I was... No? You're getting it up to me. I'm handing on it. Great. All right. Top of the order. Back to the top of the order. Guys, the top here. Yeah, thank you. I want to thank Ivy for being with us. KHkyui8oj for joining us. I think we'll all be available for questions going forward from here. But just as a closing message, we are committed to a government by and for the people. Elon Musk and Donald Trump believe that you go out and work to make them rich. And House Republicans seem to believe that you pay your taxes so that Elon Musk and Donald Trump can also get rich. We know that that's deeply wrong. And if we harness our collective power, not just as a progressive caucus, but as Democrats, and then the pressure on just a few Republicans to grow a spine, we can fire Elon Musk. Thank you all. And please state your name and the outlet. We may just defer it over to the folks you haven't heard speak yet.
X-Bill is no longer available.
Now that's fucking crowd control.
House Republicans in the Education Committee are talking about taking dollars away from public schools and using that to make their private business friends money. Because public schools, it's hard to steal their money and get it for yourself. But if you shut down our nation's public schools and then have these voucher scams, you can send hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money to private companies that then continue to donate to Republican campaigns. And so voters see through that grift. We're going to stand up for our public schools because our public schools are not piggy banks for private corporations like Elon Musk. I don't know if anybody else here wants to comment on vouchers.
Absolutely a grift in this privatization of public education, but there's also a Christian nationalist agenda very much involved. This has been something they've been done for a long time because they were indoctrinated to use their particular religion with our government in ways that would make our founders roll in their graves. So that's why I'm wearing the Build This Wall button today, the wall between church and state. Madison and Jefferson, our other founders, thought we should have, but they are, again, rolling in their grave today because upstairs today we had a national prayer breakfast where a statuary hall was hijacked and turned into a church service where, amazingly, Donald Trump presided in weird and random ways. And we'll be burning sage for months because of that.
Elon Musk crashes and breaks everything he buys. He thinks he can buy our government. We cannot allow him to crash and break our air traffic control system. Look at what happened when he bought Twitter. It just started crashing. Again, not a big deal if your app doesn't open one day. It is a really big deal if Americans don't know whether or not their air safety is protected. So this is, again, another instance where Elon Musk thinks he knows better than everybody else in the world. But in fact, he doesn't know anything about how to make sure air traffic control works. He doesn't know anything about how to make sure that our Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid payments get out to folks on time. He just knows if he wants to find a way he doesn't have to expense other people's safety. Anybody else?
I'll just say this. One of the things that's going to come up soon is Congressman Jerry Connolly and other Democrats are going to call for the various Republicans to subpoena Elon Musk and have him come to Congress and actually testify about what he's doing and why he's doing it. So we'd love to have an opportunity to test out what he knows about issues like that, what he's doing with the secret information that he's getting, conflict of issues, conflict of interest issues. He's going, Congressman Garcia testified, or discussed a minute ago, going through materials where he's got open cases filed against him and Ocean and others. What's he doing with that information? Donald Trump said he would make sure that there are no conflicts of interest, but I don't think we can really trust the conflict of interest chief in charge to take care of that. We don't want the box to be guarded in-house. We need to have him come up here and explain what he's doing. But ultimately, he needs to go, and we need to do this the right and legal way. Thank you, Nancy.
There's many we could do. Yesterday, we did have a vote in the Oversight Committee to subpoena Elon Musk and have him come speak. And we only lost that vote by one vote. So we can make sure that if we lock arms as Democrats, the Progressive Caucus is often at the forefront of making sure that we have Democratic unity and strong position. We lock arms as Democrats, we just need to pressure, in that case, just one Republican to have a spine and be willing to hear from Elon Musk. Again, Republicans aren't really the governing majority when it comes to the budget. And we have a government funding deadline coming up next month. I don't see any Democrats being willing to say, hey, we're going to pass a budget that is going to just funnel money to Elon Musk. Similarly, I know that Republicans are trying to pass their gigantic, their billionaire tax cut. They can't seem to agree with each other on it, and so Democrats have a huge opportunity to not only pay this billionaire tax break for Elon Musk, we also have an opportunity to show the American people what it looks like that half the Elon Musks of the world actually pay their fair share in taxes. We could show the American people that we don't need to cut their Social Security. In fact, we can expand it. We can make sure that your payment grows. And so there is Elon Musk also presents an opportunity. In the past, billionaires would meddle with our government behind the scenes. But now Elon Musk is bragging about it in public. And so we have an opportunity to fire Elon Musk, to rally the country around a proposal that isn't necessarily progressive or conservative. It's the baseline idea that if you work hard and play by the rules, you shouldn't have a billionaire running your life and taking your money. And we've been talking about how Democrats need to win back the working class voters we've been losing. This is exactly the kind of thing that working people believe in, no matter their background, no matter if they're rural or urban, no matter what. I haven't seen what that quote is, and so this is, I think what you're hearing clearly from us right here, is that our message is very clear. Elon Musk shouldn't be allowed to steal.
Alright guys, so let's talk about the US debt crisis today. In 2025, the US government will be facing a refinancing shock. We have a tsunami of treasury bonds maturing that will drive the economy deeper into debt. This year alone, $9.2 trillion worth of US debt will either outright mature or need to be refinanced. And that's a quarter of the total outstanding debt. And let's put this bluntly, the US government is broke. Paying back $9 trillion to bondholders will be impossible without borrowing the amount. And if you're wondering why not just print the money, if Trump gets the Federal Reserve to monetize the debt, this will just ignite a new financial crisis. Ironically, it will also drive yields higher because confidence in the debt market will collapse. So the money will be raised by issuing bonds 100%. However, there's already a tsunami of issuance coming for deficit spending. In the first 6 months of the year, Besant will be borrowing nearly $1 trillion from the open market, $850 billion in Q1 and $123 billion in Q2. Despite Doge moving to cut government workers, the spending is still going to continue. We are on a runaway train today, which is going to impact the national debt and eventually destroy the purchasing power of the dollar. And if you're a bondholder, you want your money to be worth something when you get your cash back. Now, a yield of 4 to 5% sounds really tempting, I understand. But the more bonds the Treasury issues, this poses a problem. Interest payments will start to go up and the money supply will increase over time when the bond matures. And US borrowing is under control today. The Congressional Budget Office, or the CBO, is forecasting a 1.87 trillion US budget deficit for 2025 this year, and that's $70 billion more than the year before. Here's the bad news. This is even before factoring Trump's tax cuts. He wants to lower the tax rate between companies in the United States. However, by doing that, there will be a shortfall. And you guessed it, the amount will be borrowed into existence. That's why this is the most dangerous refinancing period for Scott Bassett. In the past, he scolded Janet Yellen for borrowing money through T-bills, short-term bonds. Since 2022, Yellen has borrowed a ton of money by issuing treasury bills, and these are your 1 month, 1 year bonds. This issuance hit 86% last year. This isn't ideal because raising money from T-bills, they have a cost. You don't lock in your interest payments, you have to refinance them year after year. And we have no idea how high rates will be 10 or 20 years down the road. Yellen borrowed a lot of T-bills because she felt long-term rates were going to fall. But we all know what happened. Long-term yields kept going higher and higher. So now we are stuck with a refinancing crisis where the US government will have to borrow more money to service the old debt. We aren't even talking about the deficit needed for this year, 2025. 23% of US debt today is T-bills, and that accounts for $3 trillion worth of bonds that will be maturing this year. This is going to make the Federal Reserve's job of rate cuts even harder. If Bassett chooses to borrow even more short-term bonds for deficit spending, this will put him at the fate of the
This the White House revealing nearly 200 illegal immigrants, gang members have been arrested since Trump returned to office. And it comes after federal officials round up over 100 violent Venezuelan gang members in Colorado who have terrorized apartment buildings in the state. In his first interview since being appointed, U.S. Border Patrol Chief Michael Banks joins us now. Chief, welcome to the program. Congratulations. You may not know, you used to be Texas Border GTAR. You were a Border Patrol agent before that. You've come on back to get our border secure. Talk about these latest numbers that you have and how you guys have been able to get it done, Chief.
Look, we as Border Patrol, we don't have to get the job done. We know how to secure the border. All we needed was a president that was going to empower us, a strong leader like President Trump, and then a secretary like Secretary Nolan who knows exactly what we need to do to secure the border. We're seeing almost a 90% decrease in illegal entries since January the 21st. Not only that, our criminal prosecutions of those we're apprehending is up almost 15%. We talked about, we led into with the trend how our U.S. Border Patrol BORTAC unit is out there realize making those arrests. So we're trying to secure the border. All we needed was an administration that would let us enforce the law, and we're out there and they're seeing phenomenal gains.
So you talk about that because
I'm made aware of this, and my sources within the community that are out there on those raids yesterday, that there's leaks from local media that tip off local activists on the ground. And it makes your jobs difficult, but this is also an officer safety issue. You got all these tactical units going in for a reason and a stack because you got criminal agents that are on the street that have weapons, that have grenades, that have. Talk about the things that have been going out from the media.
And so, you know, the fact is, they're going after known criminals. We are targeting criminals and leaking and letting them know we're coming is creating more of a danger for not just our officers and agents, but for the very communities that we're trying to enforce and make safe and secure. You know, it's just irresponsible to be communicating ahead of time what we're going to be doing in law enforcement operations. You know, we've got to hold.
Gavin Newsom, he and Donald Trump have not seen eye to eye, right, for a long time. Gavin Newsom is asking the homeless to come to California. The taxes are so expensive. He's lost a lot of people. They're dealing with wildfires. So a week ago, Donald Trump went to California, came off the tarmac, and with Gavin Newsom, they shook hands, and they had conversations, and they toured the disaster areas. Then Gavin Newsom went to the White House yesterday to ask for some federal money for the people and the businesses who lost everything in the fire. This is what Gavin said after the president happened.
I look forward to more productive meetings. I look forward to the spirit that defines the meeting to this day, the spirit of collaboration and cooperation, the spirit that defines the best American people. Look, I don't know what happened at the meeting, but it's not a great start when your state wants to put out Trump-proofing agenda items. I mean, it was always destined that there was going to be some fire, some national tragedy in California where they would need the federal government to step in. I don't know how you start off a conversation saying, oh, Mr. President, by the way, we Trump-proofed it, but we need your assistance right now. Well, they're not saying it. He goes and meets with a series of attorneys at a cost of $25 million. They want to Trump-proof California. They'd be ready to challenge all the actions, like, for example, the ability for ICE to function in that state. Outside of Orange County, you're a sanctuary state. So if you're going to pay $25 million to challenge all Donald Trump and his administration's efforts in California, then don't ask for additional money to bail out California. You know, fire recovery work for the budget path, they got $2.5 billion. Sadly, the estimate damage is $250 billion. You need the federal government to help. Yep. Now, $25 million compared to $250 billion is small. I get it. But don't tell me that you're going to use money that you have in a state running a deficit before the devastating fires to fight programs I haven't even presented yet, at the same time come in hand to hand and say, I want to work with you. Can't have it both ways. Same thing with the governor of New York. Governor Hochul and President Trump have had some positive conversations. She says, please leave the congestion pricing of $9 a hit in New York. I know you can take it out. Well, don't leave a lease upon a sheet open until something's got to happen. This is called leverage. Can't happen both ways.
Yeah, there has to be a deal. Close her seat, make sure we fill that seat, and the voters that live in her district get to decide. And in exchange, I won't go after that tax that you have levied on all of the people who drive in New York City. Same with Gavin Newsom. Fix your state, make sure the water is working, make sure you lower taxes, and maybe it's give and take.